Scientifically speaking, we're sharing the view. From labs to clinics, breakthrough shining through. With minds that inspire and stories to unfold. Scientifically speaking, the future's being told.
Welcome to Scientifically Speaking with Christine on Oz Arab Media, where we explore the science behind real-world issues impacting our communities. Before I start, I'd like to give a special shout out to Laurent, who took care of my hair for today's episode. Thank you, Laurent. Today, we tackle a topic that's front and center in Australia and around the world, the housing crisis. From skyrocketing rent to first home buyer stress, the issue is complex, but there are practical and scientific solutions. Joining us today is Dr. Shane Geha, Managing Director and Co-founder of EG Advisory, which is Australia's leading rezoning company. With a PhD in planning and decades of experience transforming underutilized land into vibrant, livable spaces, Dr. Geha brings a unique perspective on how policy, urban planning, and data-driven decisions can reshape our cities and solve the affordability puzzle. Dr. Geha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Christine. Nice to be here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you tonight to tackle a very important topic. And if you don't mind me, I dig straight in. We know that Australia is experiencing a significant housing shortage, right? From your perspective, what are the core reasons for the situation we are in today?
Well, there's a lot of core reasons, but I think primarily is that cities are extremely popular. So think that roughly 70% of our population lives in only 6 places.
Wow.
And that's because they're very nice 6 places to live. So that's one problem, is that everybody wants to live in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Hobart, and so on.
Yeah.
The second thing, of course, is we have a very slow planning approval system. So the ability to actually get demand satisfied tends to be too slow. And I think the third reason is that we are reasonably affluent, so lots of people can afford to pay more, and as a society I'm talking, and therefore the house prices continue to climb. A slow supply system, unquenchable demand, and a little bit of ability to keep raising the price.
Yes, speaking of price, there's a lot of public debate on affordability. What does that actually mean in the urban planning terms?
Well, affordability is a very important thing for all cities. That's because if you are not careful, you end up with what they call the gilded city model, where you have a golden cage where all the rich and the affluent live to the exclusion of all others outside. That's one of the worst city models you can have. So actually the nicest cities, the best cities, the healthiest cities, the most vibrant cities, the most successful cities, they are cities where everybody can afford to live together. And for that you need 3 things. You need product that suits different budgets and different age groups and different demographics and different affordability criteria. You need an ability to satisfy the demand reasonably quickly, and you need also the ability to house the people next to amenity and public transport.
Dr. Geha, there's often resistance to urban density. Can you help us understand how increasing density, when it's done right, of course, can actually improve livability? And what is the role of immigration in doing so?
Okay, well, they're 2 separate questions. Let me deal with density first.
Of course.
So, Christine, one thing to remember is that density is actually the friend of the city. The denser cities are some of the most successful. And people tell me that Sydney is not too livable because it's too dense. Here's the truth. Sydney's 417 people per square kilometre of density. It is roughly a quarter of the density of Rome. It's about a fifth the density of London.
Oh, wow.
It's a quarter of the density of Paris. It's 1/11th the density of Tokyo, and it's 1/33rd the density of Manhattan. And I've just named for you some of the great destinations we all want to go to, right? So reality is that density is something that we love. But more importantly, for functionality, density is required to make the city functional. So some of the worst city models are the sparse, spaced out, endlessly sprawling cities. They are impossible to fit with public transport. So if you look at cities like Dallas and LA, which are magically sprawled, not only is the cost per kilometre very high, but also you can't make a train station work if the density around the train station is too low. Now, if you want to get cars off the road, you've got to get a good rail system, a good bus system, a good light rail system, and you need to put density next to it so it's convenient, clean, usable, first class, safe, so people can use it. And then you make it very easy for people to skip traffic journeys in a car. So take LA, one of the most sprawled cities in the world and one of the worst public transport delivery cities in the world. I'm not criticizing LA, I like it, but it is not well planned.
Right.
So what happens in LA, if you've ever been there, is try getting from the center of the city, from a nice hotel, to LAX, or LAX as I call it. Nothing lax about that airport. But try getting to LAX on Friday afternoon to catch a plane. You can't get there in 3 hours. And the reason is you will see 11 lanes of car park, which are the highway. So even an 11-lane highway in LA cannot deliver the people to their destination in a reasonable time frame. Why? Because each car has one occupant and everything needs a car journey. And of course, the American cities were originally built around the car. So the car became popular and affordable in the US as Henry Ford made it in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on. And then what happens is everyone hopped in a car and drove to somewhere, so they created parking, they put the warehousing, they put the functions of the city specifically for the car.
Right.
But what happens is that kind of works okay for cities of between 500,000 and 1 million. This is in my research. And then as the city grows beyond 1 million, Sydney's almost 6. Right, and LA is 8 to 10, depending on what you count. It is impossible for that city to function successfully without public transport.
True.
But if everyone's used to hopping in a car and going to 100 destinations, you know, drop off the kids, pick up the kids, go to the supermarket, come back from the supermarket, go to the airport, come back from the airport, drop off the dog, drop off the dry cleaning.
Convenience.
So on, so on, so on.
Yeah.
You will find that all those journeys essentially congest an 11 highway road system.
True. Wow. And what about immigration, Dr. Geha? How can immigration really help or not help density?
If you read a lot of what I've written in the past, I'm on the public record as being a great advocate of the big Australia. And you need a big Australia for many, many reasons. But let me go back one step.
Right.
All Western countries, almost without exclusion, have a massive demographic problem. This is it. The 20 to 60 age group is the only age group, more or less, please don't ring me if there's a 19-year-old or a 61-year-old,
no,
but roughly speaking,
we get the idea.
Speaking, the 20 to 60 age group is the only age group that actually creates GDP wealth and pays tax revenue.
True.
So before you're 20, you cost us a lot of money because we've got to educate you, bring you up, take you through the health system, take you through primary school, secondary school, university. That's all a cost to the system and, of course, essential.
True.
But you're still not contributing to the tax base in a meaningful way. And after you're 60 or 65, you cost us a lot of money because your health now becomes important to us. We have to give you cataracts, knee replacements, hip replacements, have a carer for you.
Sure.
Your hospital visits increase, your GP visits increase, your medical bills for the pharmaceutical benefits scheme are high. So we need to pay for these two age groups essentially out of the 20 to 60 demographic. Now that 20 to 60 demographic is shrinking in the entire Western Hemisphere.
Okay.
And in China, by the way, as well.
Okay.
The main reason is that we are no longer having children at a rate that replaces mum and dad. So just to give you an example, Japan is one of the worst offenders. It's at 1.1 children per couple.
Okay.
Australia's at about 1.5. The US is about 1.5. A lot of countries in Europe are around the 1.2, 1.1, 1.3, Sweden, Norway, Switzerland.
Yeah.
They literally are shrinking. So when people tell me, oh my God, we can't have immigration because it'll change the culture, I'll tell you something. I've got news for you. Your culture's gone anyway.
Oh.
At 1.1 children per couple, in 100 or 200 or 300 years, you will have no culture. You have the chance now to increase the people in the right demographics and change their culture to yours and integrate them properly.
So you're
And when
calling for more kids per family.
Well, please, Christine, you've only had 2. We need a bit more.
I got scolded out when I said I had only 2.
No. We need you to have at least 2 more.
Yes.
And at least 1 for Australia. And tell husband Charbel that it's really not about him. It's about our country.
It is true. But again, affordability, Doctor.
Of course. Affordability is a massive problem. And it's
Yes.
a problem for the entire world. South Korea has the worst birth rate in the world currently that we know of. It's
Yes.
0.88 children per couple. So they've got a massive demographic issue. But it will impact the economy in such a way that if we don't address it now, in 30 years, you can't actually have an immigration rate that is sustainable because it'll be in the millions in order for you to fill that demographic. And as that demographic shrinks, as you get to 40% in that age group compared to the 100% population, you literally cannot ever balance another budget because there aren't enough people in that demographic to actually pay for everything. Or you have to reduce services, or that's not going to be electorally popular, or increase taxation on less and less people, very unpopular, right? So we're kind of running out of options. So here's the best solution. You import lots of people in the 14 to 40 age group. They come here. Migrants try really hard, as you did, as I did, as our parents did, as our grandparents did. They come, they contribute to the economy straight away. They go through the education system with their children. Then their children go to uni usually. They try really hard. They achieve really well.
Right.
And then they go straight into the tax system for 40 years. That's really what we need them to do.
But Doctor, sorry if I'm cutting you off. These people need a place to sit, and they need to afford this place to sit in. Aren't we increasing the chance or the risk for having to live unaffordable or more expensive?
Yes, we are. So, of course, demand creates an issue.
Yes.
But remember, it's not an equal equation. So the cost that we have for a migrant to come and to live is not equal to the production that they make and contribution they make to the economy. Their contribution is very, very frequently much greater than the cost to our community. But of course, housing is a basic need, and we need to house our people. But here's the big disconnect. We've got a federal government that's in charge of immigration and the federal budget, which is the $700 billion big number. And then we've got the states that are essentially in charge of delivery, including health, education, and housing. And there's quite a disconnect between the federal policy and the state policy. Now, that shouldn't be unfixable, but we found that disconnect to be quite difficult to deal with in the last 5 to 10 years. And let me tell you what the crux of the problem is in real numbers. When I was a child, when I was, say, 12 years old, you could buy a house in Ashfield with a 400 square metre block of land for around $60,000. That's not in 100 lifetimes. That's just in my lifetime.
A generation
just in my
away.
lifetime, and I'm not that old.
No,
but,
you're
but
not.
No,
Indeed.
I'm old enough, but not that old.
No,
So,
I agree with you because it happened to my parents. Just 35 years ago, they were able to buy a house in Western Sydney for $60,000, $50,000.
Yeah.
And it was affordable.
And it's 3 times what was back then the average annual salary. So the average annual salary in that year would have been around $20,000, right? $20,000 times 3 equals $60,000.
Right.
Now, it's not the best house, it's not the best street, it's not any of those things, but it's a very good lodging with a nice block of land. That's the great Australian dream. That's the dream. The house and the land and the suburbs, living a nice life, a dog, a cat, a car, a house. That's the Australian dream.
That's true.
And you know what Napoleon said? He said, aspiration runs the world. We all should aspire to a beautiful dwelling. That's absolutely true. And we should make this as affordable as possible for people. The problem is that today, that house in Ashfield is something like 16 times the average annual salary.
Oh, my God.
Right? 16 times the average annual salary. Now, that means that you can go to Epping. That's now at 12 times the average annual salary. So that's another 20 Ks out, right? Or some number like that.
When they say you go further, you get cheaper.
You do. That's the operational value city model. But you know, you can now get to places like Mount Druitt, which used to be in the outliers of Sydney, and now you're still at $1 million a house.
Yes.
So house needs to be probably not the first step now for young people. And by the way, I'm committed to young people's well-being, because in my honest view, we need to leave for our youth the opportunity that we were given when we were young to be able to aspire to own the home, the great Australian dream.
But no one is moving out.
So, well...
because it's too expensive to do so.
Yeah, so one of three things could happen. The dwelling could get cheaper. Now let's see, what is the cost of a dwelling? So the cost of the dwelling is essentially... It's many things.
Okay.
So if I could simplify it into three components. Right. It's the land, the cost of the land. There's the cost of the construction and fees and charges. Okay, and then the builder or the developer puts the profit on top.
Yeah.
They're the big three. The hardest one to play with is actually the cost of the construction, because the construction is essentially made up of labour and construction material.
True.
Now, construction material typically, and well, certainly has in the last 50 years, escalated at an inflation rate about twice or three times the normal inflation.
Yes.
For many reasons. Also, the additional requirements for environmental means that we now go further and further out to get more and more material, and the cost of disposal of the refuse and the rubbish is very high.
Yeah.
So the cement is dearer, the aggregate is dearer. All of that is dearer. The bricks are dearer. It's all dearer. And then if you add to that the cost of labour for a tradesman, for a young apprentice, they've all reached different levels as well. So the cost of construction probably is unfixable. So wherever that's at, that's now at.
That's
right?
now at.
And I would also argue that all the new reforms to the building industry, whilst they might be adding to quality, if they are, they certainly will add to cost and time.
Yes.
And that will mean that the average construction will get even more expensive. So I think construction costs are probably unfixable. So let's leave them out of it. That leaves us with the fees and charges is the next category I'll deal with.
Yes.
The fees and charges are essentially in three tiers. We've got local fees to the local council.
Right.
We've got state fees and charges, like the stamp duty and the land tax. And then we've got the GST on the new dwelling. Of course, GST is not payable on an old dwelling, but actually it's kind of payable, because what happens when you put 10% on a new dwelling, the old dwelling basically acquires about 5 or 6% as a differential in the market, essentially.
Okay.
Because you will buy it for 5 or 6% more when it's reasonably not new, even relatively new, to save the 10%.
Yes.
So it's how it creeps up.
It's an average, yes.
It creeps up. So let's look at it. So if you're getting a $900,000 new apartment somewhere in Ryde or Epping, maybe that's no longer even affordable, but let's say you could, that 900,000 is essentially 400,000 in construction costs, 300,000 in fees and charges, and 300,000 in land component.
Wow.
And the fees and charges nobody's willing to let go of. They can't let go of the GST. No one's going to let go of stamp duty. Remember, stamp duty is 5.5% of the cost of a new dwelling. It's a lot, right? And then if you're developing that land to build it, by the time you bought it, approved it, got the DA, the CC, they're the approval milestones, and then taken a year and a half to build it and then delivered it, that's probably a 5 or 6 year period. You've been paying 1.6% land tax on the unimproved capital value of the land for that period. So you add all that up, plus there's now state fees and charges for the infrastructure, usually $9,000 or $10,000 a dwelling for the new greenfield areas. If you add all that up, I'm not saying it's not justified. There's always, in a functional democracy, a reason to justify it.
Right.
I'm just simply sympathising with the poor new homeowner who can't actually afford these type of charges. So that leaves you only with the land. Now, the land should be perfectly elastic. It should be, because there's no real price for land.
Okay.
Land should be able to be shrunk with less demand and increased with less. So the price increases with more demand and shrinks with less demand. The problem is, if you've got an archaic planning system that is so slow at delivering approvals, and you can't build without these approvals legally, or even illegally, you can't build without these approvals, you basically have a system that is unable to discount the land, because the land is now so tightly held, and approvals become so expensive and difficult to get that people pay a premium to have them.
So it should go fast so that we
Well,
can find
I wrote an article which
Yeah.
you might see on LinkedIn, which is very interesting, called Snail's Pace.
Yes.
So
I heard you talking about it.
So it's a very interesting, fun way to think about it. It is unthinkable, really, and unimaginable, really, to actually postulate this.
Yes.
That is that a snail that travels at 0.05 kilometers an hour has enough time, sleeping 8 hours a night, to travel from here to Canberra and back before I, an expert, can get an average $50 million DA approved in New South Wales.
Wow.
Approved, not built. I haven't built it yet.
Oh my
But the snail,
Yeah.
it can go from here to Canberra and back before we get this approval. And that's a problem.
It is indeed. But there are so many other problems as well. I'm hoping I can cover everything today. But another topic I'd like to tackle is the rezoning.
Yeah.
So we know that your company, the EG Advisory, is known for rezoning lands, right?
Yes.
For our listeners who may not know, what exactly is rezoning, Dr. Geha, and why is it such an important part of solving the housing crisis?
Essentially, think of cities as living organisms.
Right.
They grow, they increase, they become obese, they become fit. Some areas go into decline, some areas go into great health, some areas prosper. But essentially, the way that patterns of most cities have gone in the last 100 or 200 years is that they start off with grotty city centres where the factories are located, with the squalor of the poor working class, with the gentry living on the outside and the wealthy industrialists. And then eventually the city centre becomes very important because it's in convenience, its location next to waterways, and cities go through a period of gentrification. Look at Woolloomooloo, look at Drummoyne, look at all of these areas that were once or Balmain, that once were working class or industrial, and now they're extremely important, expensive, and elite. So all these gentrifications transform cities from one form to another. Also, all cities go through a different type of transformation. If you think of Australia in the 50s, we were a fairly strong manufacturing kind of community.
Yes.
We had factories that made things, we had clothing, we had textiles, we even made cars. And now we don't make any of those things. So if you think of the type of use has changed. And now residential and residential amenities become more important. So we tend to swap those areas for those.
Right.
And therefore, in a city that is ossified, by ossified I mean it's locked in by its zoning permissible and non-permissible uses, once a use becomes obsolete, it's actually very important for a city to be able to do the legal and the statutory and the physical and the environmental investigations that require that transformation to occur from the old to the new.
That is a very interesting topic. And how does infrastructure planning, like having schools, parks, hospitals around the area, factor into the rezoning decisions?
Well, it's chicken and egg. People often say, we don't want anything to rezone, we don't want any more people until someone builds the schools, the hospitals, the roads. But actually, they're very expensive assets, right? So you've got two options. You can build them ahead of time for billions of dollars, put them all on the credit card, and then pray to God that the people will come. Or my version, bring the people, let them suffer a little bit, plan the roads, the hospitals, the schools 5 years ahead of time, because it takes us 5 years to plan them and 5 years to deliver them.
Oh, wow.
That's how long.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a funny story about when I was in China, what they do. Anyway, but that to me is the better way to do it. Do it up front, plan it as though it's happening now, bring the people quickly, and you're going to need them for the economy. Get them all into the tax base, get them paying tax, get them contributing to the state revenue, to the federal revenue. And with that money, you will not need much on the credit card. And then you can we build beautiful infrastructure. We build the M8. My God, what a beautiful road.
Yes.
We built the Harbour Bridge in 1932. It's still serving us now.
True.
Right? So these are all wonderful, wonderful abilities that we have to supply. And then the hospitals, of course, need to be first class, and they're expensive. All of those facilities, the schools, the hospitals, But I don't need schools and hospitals if I've got no people. I mean, if you know what I mean? If I've got 4 people living in the suburb, they don't need anything.
That is true. And you did mention places like Drummoyne and other places that got rezoned and they become elite, right? So is this the equation? They will become more expensive after rezoning?
Generally, they do. And but also you have rural areas in Eastern Creek and in places like that where, for instance, we rezoned Wonderland from a theme park to an industrial park employing 9,000 people because we need a place for jobs, we need a place for logistics and transport. It's an industrial park that basically connects the warehousing of Sydney. So, and people said I killed the fun in Australia, but actually...
we need a place to live though. What can we do?
But actually, reality is I didn't kill the fun. The park was already obsolete by the time I got there. And by the time I got there, the park basically was unsafe for people to hop on those rides. And it was going to take millions and millions of dollars to rejuvenate it. So the truth is it was ripe for renewal. I'll give you another example. The largest IKEA in the Southern Hemisphere is in Tempe. I rezoned that land with my team and the EG team, and that land used to be a putrescible waste dump. 100,000 metres of fallow land, not used for anything, emitting methane, and yet it was brilliantly located. It's on a main highway, it's next to the airport, it's next to the port, and of course IKEA wanted this land specifically. So we changed its use from an obsolete land use that had fulfilled its duty to a new land use that people could go and enjoy and shop, and it employs 650 people, which I think in itself is a godsend for the area.
100%. Doctor, if you mind me asking, are there specific policies or government incentives you believe can make better support development of the affording house stock?
Of course, and governments play a vital role in getting this done. So, but essentially there are 2 things that are contributing to the unaffordability. There's lack of supply and there's increased demand. So we need to work on both. We don't mind the demand being high because remember 70% of us own already or are owning our own dwelling in Australia, as opposed to other countries where it's not as high. But for the 70% of people where we are either owning or have owned already fully our own home, a price increase in the dwelling is magnificent because it's tax-free, it's where you live, it's an identity, it's many things. As Sir Edward Coke once said, every man's home is his castle.
That's true.
Right? So, and woman, of course.
Of course.
He meant
family.
both. He meant both.
Get it.
He meant both. So, reality for us is that we have a problem. We want to maintain a high rate of home ownership. We've got extremely popular cities that rank in the top 5 in the world in almost every survey. We want lots of people that want to come here. So that's a popularity contest. We can subsidize homeowners and do that, but those schemes tend to have a limited capacity to help. Because at the end, the cost of the dwelling is the cost of the dwelling, and the free market has to deliver most of them. Government can't do that much, right, in the Western Hemisphere anyway. And so we really need to work on supply. And supply is a problem if you've got a very old planning system, which was, our Planning Act, our 1979 Planning Act, is essentially a replica of the 1932 Town and Country Planning Act of Mother England. We've got a local government system that goes back to 1919. By the way, all of this made sense a century ago.
Back then,
and it was absolutely reasonable and fair. And our cities worked beautifully until they got to about 1 million people. But no longer is it fit for purpose.
Yes.
And we recognise that, and all these people, including the Premier of today and many others, recognise this. But it's not true that they're able to fix it easily. Because the system is very clunky, it's got layers and layers and layers of rules, and every year we've added more rules. But you know what we need to do? We need to do what Emperor Justinian did in 537 AD. He took 500 years of Roman law, and he recodified it into one set of rules called the Justinian Code, or the Codex Justinianus. So what we need a new code, less rules, more permissiveness. We're going to stop being horrified about the over-regulated city, right? You're not going to perish, and we're going to give young people a chance to live with us in our society peacefully and happily for decades to come.
Looking forward to this. Amazing. How do we ensure that developments serve a diverse population? Like you said, from young Australians to older ones, from renters to homeowners.
Well, let me give you the dimension of the problem. If you live in Australia's most expensive street is Wolseley Road, Point Piper. The average house there, I think, is $40 million.
Okay.
Let's say you live there.
All right. I hope so.
I wish.
One day.
I wish. I wish for all of us, right? This is the aspiration that runs the world, right?
True.
To aspire to better things for ourselves and our children. But the Rose Bay Police Station is right round the corner. Now, the Rose Bay Police Station would be manned by people who are very honourable citizens of this country and this state and this city, who essentially live 100 kilometres away. That's where they would live. They would have to travel an hour in each direction each day just to get to the Rose Bay Police Station. Now, there's the people that look after you at Prince of Wales Hospital that's round the corner. Those nurses travel 50 and 60 kilometres to come. The junior doctors. So the ambulance workers. Now, we all need the supermarket workers and the hospital workers. We do. And they need to live somewhere reasonable and close.
Around their work.
And they can't, because there is nothing remotely affordable.
Right.
And remember, rentals follow price. So if the price of a one bedroom is 10 million, then the rent is too high, right?
True.
It's just a
Of
joke.
course.
So what we really have to be able to do is create either smaller spaces, forego some rules and regulations, forego them. We're so attached to the rules. I wrote an article on my LinkedIn, if you'd like to read it. It's called The Nightmare of Red Tape.
Yes.
And remember that red tape was invented by Holy Emperor Charles V in the 16th century. And red tape used to be put by the emperor around the file. By the way, red tape is Phoenician, right? So because the Phoenicians invented the red dye, right? And that was the color of the emperor. He would put it around the file to speed up the file.
Yes.
And what I'd like to know is that how in 500 years red tape came to choke the file. It's meant to speed it up. So we've got no transactions in the property space that are fast. No delivery systems that allow the quick delivery. Now, as you go slower and slower and slower and slower, and by the way, I'm running EG and our group of companies for the 26th year, and would you believe we are slower and worse in delivering the same outcomes today as we were, not e.g., we're not slower and worse.
Because of the policies and procedures and everything that's required.
Because if you need to follow the rules and there's 100 more rules and they're 100 times more complicated, you simply can't get through it.
True.
It's like planting more trees in a jungle, useless trees, by the way, that you can't get through to get to the other side. So just think, if you did the same thing for 26 years, whatever it is, if you announce things on radio, pack matchboxes, put on your shoes, for 26 years in a row, should you be faster and better in year 26 or slower and worse?
Technically faster.
Absolutely faster and better. Everyone would say that. So how come we're slower and worse?
How come?
I don't know. It's a quandary to all. We all well-meaning. By the way, I'm privileged that I live in this country, as we all are.
Yes,
and one of the privileges of, I think, living in a great city and a state is that essentially our bureaucracy and our people are honest. I don't care what anyone says. We're almost entirely free of corruption. We're not... You know, you can go to many...
If you see what's happening in the world, that's
you go to many other countries and compare, right? But despite the fact that we don't have those obstacles in our way, we seem to have hindered ourselves with a highly over-regulated society. There was a very famous quote from the US Supreme Court judge that created zoning in the Western Hemisphere, a guy called Justice Sutherland, very brilliant man, Chief Justice Sutherland. After he invented zoning or sanctioned zoning in a 1926 court case called Euclid and Ambler, all the rules became plentiful. 500 US cities acquired zoning ordinances. People got clogged up that didn't have the rules. And they ran to him and they said, Chief Justice, we are very confused about the rules. There are so many rules. So which rule should we follow? And he said something extremely sagacious, extremely wise. He said, whenever I'm confused about the rules, I only just remember one rule. Salus populi suprema lex est. The welfare of the people is the supreme law.
Coming towards the end of our lovely conversation, I'd like to know your vision about the Australian cities in the next 10 to 15 years and what needs to change, in your opinion, for your dream to happen here.
My view is that it's not that complicated if you have the willpower to do it. Our cities should be around 10 to 12 million people because they're relatively isolated in world terms and they don't have a lot of satellite cities. Sydney should be 10 or 12 million, Melbourne should be 10 million, Brisbane should be 8 to 10 million. All of our cities should be bigger, and then the satellites can grow to 500,000, 1 million or 2 million. Wollongong, Geelong, all those cities.
Wow.
And then you can have a fantastic fast rail system that connects them all together. Because remember, that's going to cost about $140 billion to do. And so for it to connect, you need the taxpayer base to pay for it. And we need it to be first class so people will use it. And I think we need to increase migration so we can grow Australia to be the big Australia. So the tax base that we need to pay for our infrastructure going forward can give us the lifestyle that we desire.
Lovely. And are there any international cities or models of cities that you would think Australians can learn from to make them as big as they are or as good as they are to solve the housing crisis?
Well, Tokyo probably is a model city in terms of public transport. London has a basically brilliant public transport system for the city. You've got so many interesting cities that you can go to. I mean, people talk about the density of Manhattan being so grand and so amazing, which is 33 times more dense than Sydney.
Wow.
Right? And it works particularly well because they're walkable cities. Now, to make the city walkable, you've got to create very nice walkways and excellent public transport systems so that actually Beirut is a very interesting city.
Is it?
Yes, it's about 6 times the density of Sydney, 6 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. By the way, Lebanon has roughly a slightly larger density than India.
Okay.
Lebanon. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's small.
Well, I can't imagine. Well, we need a good transport system in Lebanon.
We do, but they're very walkable. You look at Beirut, you go to Ashrafieh, you go to West Beirut, to Hamra. You basically pick up your laundry, you drop off your food, you pick up your bread, you can go shopping. In fact, Beirut is so dense, you actually do your visits on your way home because you run into 10 of your friends. Yeah, Kifkon, this and that, I'm this, I'm that. This is good. So density is the friend of the city. We shouldn't be scared of it. And we should pile it on next to $1 billion and $2 billion train stops.
Wow.
And you look at the Northwest Metro, that's $1 billion a train stop. You look at the new Metro, right? It's $2 billion a train stop. Let's put people next to it. It should be used 24/7.
Wow. Dr. Geha, thank you so much for your insights, for breaking such a very complicated topic into simple forms where the community can understand and realize why they can't afford anymore or why prices are going high. Thank you so much for your time for today. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
To our listeners, housing is more than just a market issue. It's a human issue. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged with the cities we all call home. Until next time, I'm Christine from Scientifically Speaking with Oz Arab Media.